Everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us on, I know the kids have been in school for ages, but today is the last day of summer. Tomorrow, I believe, fall equinox. And we were just talking before the webinar, we can feel it, fall allergies in full bloom. So hopefully you're not like me and staring at the screen through little slits of bloodshot allergy pollen-laden eyes. Okay, hopefully I've rambled enough to give people enough time to enter their Zoom rooms and join us to talk about the capacity building funding opportunity that Sunflower Foundation is delighted to be able to offer this fall. Strengthening our sector. Yes, we realize it's SOS, but think of that in the best way. We're all here to help each other, stronger nonprofits for a healthier Kansas. And I will take the next slide, please, and introduce you to the team on the call today and the ones that will be working with you over the next month or so if you decide to put an application together. I'm Elizabeth Berger. I'm the Vice President of Healthy Communities here at Sunflower. We have Brandon Skidmore, Vice President of Health Systems, Gabby Talavera, our Program Associate for the program area, and Kelly Mark, she's our grants manager and queen of Flux. She understands and helps you with a system that none of us can do. Before we get started, would like to go through a little housekeeping now that you know who we are. We'd love to know who you are, and if you feel comfortable, please feel free to drop your name and organization and where you're from in the chat box. We'd love to know that. A reminder, you are muted right now, but once we get to the end of our slides and do some Q&A, you'll have the option to raise your hand and Kelly will unmute you. If you don't like speaking up in a webinar, and I totally get it, you can drop your questions in the Q&A box, or you can drop them in the chat box, up to you. I think that's it on the housekeeping. You know who we are, and we'll take it to the next slide. Just a reminder, Sunflower Foundation is a statewide health philanthropy. We've been around for a little over 20 years. We serve all 105 Kansas counties and our 4 sovereign native nations here in Kansas. And our mission is to serve as a catalyst to improve the health and well-being of all Kansans. Now, way back in 2002, we launched our first capacity building grant opportunity. We realized even at the start, nonprofit sector do really, really important work in the critical area of social determinants of health. We didn't have that language back then, but we realized what you were doing and that capacity building was important. We have been tremendously proud that you have allowed us to partner with the nonprofit sector over the past 2 decades with 330 capacity building grants, and that's about 12 million in funding. We're a small foundation covering a pretty big state, but that's a big, it may not be a big investment in others' eyes. It's a big investment for us. That's how much we care about the sector. At this point, I'm going to toss it to Gabby, and she's going to walk you through the RFP parts and pieces and components. Take it away, Gabby.
All right, thank you, Elizabeth, for that introduction. Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this morning. Like Elizabeth said, my name is Gabby Talavera, and I am a program associate here at Sunflower. So to get right into things, what exactly do we mean when we talk about capacity building? And so we say that capacity building refers to the capacity. The capacity is the infrastructure that allows an organization to fulfill its mission and strengthen its impact. And I'm sure for many of you, this isn't your first time applying for a grant, and you're probably familiar that this is quickly becoming a gold standard in the philanthropy sector. Capacity building aims to strengthen nonprofits to become better equipped to provide their services. This historically means that funding typically supports infrastructure, technology upgrades, and improvements to communications. So now speaking about this grant opportunity specifically, our goal with this funding is to improve the capacity of nonprofits serving Kansans and their ability to routinely meet their goals, sustain day-to-day operations, mobilize partners, enhance systems, secure additional resources, grow influence, and increase their visibility. And now this may seem all very general right now, and you may be asking yourself, okay, but what are the specific tangible things that we can spend the funding on? And I promise that's going to be addressed soon. The type of capacity building funding that we're doing with this opportunity is what we call core operating support, which is just the working capital that nonprofits need to function and execute their mission. At the end of the day, you all are the experts when it comes to the issues that you address within your nonprofits. So really, ultimately, you should be the ones in charge of how to use the dollars. I am going to go ahead and toss this over to Brandon, who will overview what the funding can be used for, as well as how that links to what deliverables we expect to see.
All right, thanks, Gabby, and good morning, everyone. Thanks again for joining us. So as we think about core operating support, it is a little different than a traditional grant. So as Gabby mentioned, we're providing you, the expert, the flexibility to decide how you want to deploy the dollars if you're awarded a grant through this RFP opportunity. And so with that, this RFP does not require you to put together a budget. It just requires you to meet the parameters of what the grant dollars cannot be used for, which is listed here at the bottom of your slide. You can see those 4 or 5 bullets that are listed there. And those are pretty typical for most basic grants that are provided through foundations. So when you get past those 5 things, you can kind of see that the world is pretty much open to how you will spend or deploy those dollars. So while how you spend the dollars is totally up to you, what we really want you to think about are the deliverables that we're going to ask you about in return for getting the grant. So we're not really going to ask you a lot about how you've spent the money, but in turn, we're going to ask you to think about your own capacity as an organization and what are those things that within your organization you would like to tackle that you feel like by doing so, you could really take your organization to the next level. You could better meet your mission. You could better meet the people in your communities or across the state that you serve on a daily basis. And those things might look like some of the bullets that are listed there in the top section of this slide. So enhancing your business functions, diversifying your revenue streams, improving your communication streams, strengthening your workforce and team culture. These are the type of things that typically flow into capacity of an organization. So again, we're not going to ask you how you spend your dollars, but we are going to ask you about your capacity. We want you to kind of spend some time reflecting on what those needs are, meeting together internally with your team and really figuring out what is it that we need to take our organization to the next level. And then those are the things that we want to have a conversation with you about over the next year that you're spending your dollars. Now, the other nice thing about this money is not only is it flexible in how you spend it, but because it's flexible in how you spend it, you don't necessarily have to be spending it on day one that you receive it. So this gives you some time maybe internally to take a few weeks, meet together as your internal team and really lay out a plan for how you might want to spend those dollars. So say, for example, you apply for and receive the $25,000 maximum. As a team, you might get together and say, hey, we've really got some immediate needs and holes that we need to plug. And that might take about, $15,000. But maybe we want to take $10,000 that's remaining and really focus on some capacity issues that we have. Maybe you need to hire a consultant to help you with communications. Maybe you need to rebuild your website. So with that flexibility in how to spend the money also comes the flexibility in time to determine how you might want to address your capacity. And not only will you be addressing your capacity, but we'll be helping you do that through a series of learning collaboratives that Gabby will talk about later in the presentation. And through that mechanism, we'll be able to help you augment maybe how you use some of that money by bringing in experts from across the country to talk about things that are important to you as a grantee. So with that, I will turn it back to Gabby.
Thanks, Brandon, for that overview. Now to get into the nitty-gritty details of the grant. As Brandon mentioned, grant awards won't exceed a maximum amount of $25,000. That doesn't mean that you have to request the full $25,000, but if that is what you need, by all means, please go ahead and do so. This is a competitive process, so as much as we'd want to fund all of your applications, we can't. So unfortunately, that means not all qualifying and deserving proposals can be funded. Grants are expected to be accomplished within approximately 1 year from the date of the award, with funding announcements being in the end of December and then leaving some time in January for letters of agreements to be signed and discussion and such. We expect those grants to begin sometime in February of 2024. As for reporting, a progress report, which will most likely be in the midpoint of the grant, and a final report will be required. As Brandon mentioned also, we are not requiring a budget, so no financial report will be necessary. Although there may be a narrative question on either reports asking how the funds have been spent thus far. We do use an online grants management system called Flux for our reporting, so submitting them electronically online is an option, although also narrative reports in the form of virtual check-ins with our program staff can also be an option if that's easier. As Brandon mentioned, we do have learning collaboratives, which are kind of a staple for Sunflower Foundation. They're typically hosted at our nonprofit center here in Topeka, which you can see on the bottom right. Grantees will be able to attend the learning collaboratives alongside other nonprofit leaders across the state of Kansas to learn from local and national experts on capacity building activities. Ultimately, the topics that are going to be covered at these learning collaboratives are going to be chosen by you, the grantees. We really hope to identify some common priority areas within this cohort of grantees so that everyone has the opportunity to apply what they've learned at our collaboratives back home in their own organizations. Who should apply? I'm sure some of you may have questions about eligibility, so please know that this funding is directed at supporting organizations that prioritize collaboration and work to address critical health and/or social issues, as well as enhance local systems of care. I have received already several questions asking whether or not this means you have to be in the medical field, and the answer is no. While you may certainly be in the medical field, it's not required. At Sunflower, we like to look at health holistically, and we understand that that goes hand in hand with human services and those social determinants of health. We do have some criteria that your organization must meet. One of which being a tax-exempt status under Section 501c3 of the IRS, or be an instrumentality of state or local government. I do have one caveat here. If you are an instrumentality of state or local government, the funding can't be used to supplant anything that might be deemed a core responsibility of yours. And of course, we require organizations to embrace diversity and inclusion across all dimensions. What does a successful application look like? So now you may know whether or not you're eligible, and let's say you are and want to start the application process. We do have some tips that we'd like to recommend. First of which being is to be genuine. We really want to hear about the obstacles you face so we can be the best partner that we can be. I know it can be kind of intimidating talking about weaknesses and hurdles that you've yet to overcome. But the whole point of this is to improve capacity under the assumption that you have gaps to fill, and we can't help support you fill those gaps without knowing what they are. Second is to be personal. Write in your own words and don't feel pressured to use fancy language or academic jargon. Also, focus on local data. We want to learn more about your community and the people you serve, as well as their needs. And finally, be ready to reflect during and before the application process. As Brandon said, we really recommend meeting internally with your team and conducting a self-check of sorts. You know, what challenges have you faced in the past year? What can be improved? And how can you leverage this funding to achieve those improvements? So we've gone over quite a bit of information at this point, so we have some recommended next steps for you all. First is to read through the RFP in its entirety and reach out to us with any questions. I will have all of our emails on the last slide of this presentation. Second is to conduct a self-assessment with your team members and identify some priority areas that you'd like to address with this funding. And, you know, if necessary, you're always welcome to use the application questions found in the RFP and on our online portal to guide your discussion. Third is to register in our grants management system, Flux, which is linked here and in the RFP. And I'll be able to make sure that these slides are available to you all after the webinar. 4 is an important one. It is to complete and submit your application by 5 p.m. Central Time on October 19th, 2023. So we are 1 month out from today. Technical assistance will be available until 4 p.m. if needed, just in case you need any help with Flux or any online issues. And finally, number 5, wait for funding announcements, which will be made on or before December 22nd, 2023. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and toss it over to Kelly so that she can guide you through the application process.
Thanks, Gabby. Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly Mark. I'm the Grant and Finance Manager here at Sunflower. We've talked a lot about Flux, our online grants management system. I know a lot of you have been in Flux because you're previous Sunflower grantees or you've already figured out how to register. But I'm going to show you how to register, what the grantee portal looks like, and where you can find resources for Flux. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Make sure I pick the right one. Okay. Right now I'm on the Sunflower website. Gabby, nod your head if you can see the appropriate screen. Perfect. And this is sunflowerfoundation.org. And I'm just going to show you where you can find some resources and get logged into Flux. So when you first log into sunflowerfoundation.org, you will be on the main page, which is not where I am, but this grantee login will still be there. And if you hover over that grantee login, you can see the Sunflower portal. If you click on that, it will take you to the registration page for Flux. I am on the How We Work page. So that's one of the main tabs across the top there. If you just click on How We Work, it will take you to this page. And if you scroll down a little bit, you can see our capacity building RFP. It's linked here, so you can actually download that and find out more. And here's a login for Flux. And then we've got some Flux technical assistance videos. So if you can't watch me live, give you this run through right now, you can come here and watch this video, and it's going to show you the same stuff. And then we have some tools where you can learn about our grant process and what the process these applications are going to go through review and things like that. So several different ways for you to get to Flux. I am going to go ahead and go to the Flux registration page. So say I came up here and I clicked on Sunflower portal. It is going to take me right here to our Sunflower registration page. If you're brand new and you've never been in Flux before, you're going to click this Create an Account Now button, and that will take you to the registration page. If you have been in Flux before, if you're a previous Sunflower grantee, you will already have a login. You're going to put that right there. And then if you just click this forgot password button, it will take you to a link to set a password. I'm going to assume that you're brand new and you need to register. So you click this create an account now. And it opens up our registration page. So first you're asked for the primary contact information. So this is going to be the primary contact for the grant, the person that is going to get all the notifications. You put that information in. And then we ask for the organization information. So everything about the organization that's applying. Tax ID is a required field, so we do need that to be filled in. You will get a red error if you skip that field. And once you get all that information filled in, you're going to hit submit request. When you do that, I'm not going to do it because I don't have everything filled in. But when you do that, you'll see this little flux icon pop up on your screen, and you'll get a message that says, hey, you've successfully submitted your registration. You will get your email or your username and your password link emailed to you shortly. Those emails all come into our system. I go through them to make sure we have the required information and then accept your registration. That is when that email will go to you. So if you don't get that email within a couple of days, I try to get them within the same day, but we're busy folks here. So if you don't get an email within probably 48 hours, feel free to shoot me an email and I will make sure that you get set up. Okay, we're going to go back one. So you've gotten your email from Flux and you've got your username. You're going to enter that username in here. There will be a token link in your email for you to set your password. So you've got your password, put that information in, and then you are going to sign into Flux. And when you sign into Flux, you are automatically going to get taken to our grantee portal, which is the screen that you see here. This first link here, Find Flux Technical Assistance Resources, that takes you to that page on the Sunflower website that has those Flux videos. We also have a downloadable PDF guide that kind of walks you through Flux and how to use everything. But really, all of your action buttons are going to be right here on the left side of Flux. You're going to be able to monitor your application, start your application, and it's going to take you all the way through the grant process. So the very first thing that you need to do is click on this Start an Application button. And you can see here you've got some information about our latest RFP, tells you the application deadline, it talks a little bit about the webinars. And this green button right here is how you start your application. So when you click on that green button, the application is going to open for you. Here it is right here. This application opens in edit mode. So you're able to go ahead and type right in here. You've got your primary contact information. You probably will not be able to put your primary signatory and financial contact in yet if they're different from you because they haven't been added to the system. But you can say, yes, this information above needs to be updated, and then enter the name and email address of your primary and financial contact, and we'll get those accounts created for you. Here is the questions that you're going to start answering down here. You have all that information filled in. Now, one of the things that's really important about Flux is it does not auto save. So we've got a little save button down here. Where'd my cursor go? Super important to save often. If your internet service gets interrupted, if you get called away and you're gone too long and it auto closes for you, nothing will be saved if you have not hit the save button. So please save as you're going along, but Flux does not auto save. But as long as you hit that save button, you can come in and out of your application up until October 19th with no problem. Once you have completed your application and you're ready to submit, or you're going to go out and come back in later, hit this save and close button. That's going to take you out of edit mode after it thinks. All right, so now you see I've hit save and close. Now I've got a submit button down here. And I also have an edit button. That's how I'm going to get back into edit mode to continue working on my application. And I've also got a print button. If you're finished with your application and you would like to go ahead and print it out so you can have a copy, you can use that as well. Okay, we're going to go to the left side here again so you can see what happens when you submit your application. When you first open a new application, so you've hit that Start an Application button, you've filled in some of your stuff, you've hit Save and Close, you will know you have an application open because you will have something in pending requests right here. If you have started one application, you will have a number 1 next to this pending requests. And if you click on that, you can see your application that you've started. And it's going to open in this window as soon as it gets done thinking. You can see your application here. And there's that edit button for you. So you click on that, it puts it back in edit mode so you can start working on your application again. When you submit your application, I probably won't be able to do it because my application isn't filled out all the way, but we'll give it a shot. Yeah. So here's a good thing to go over. If you're submitting your application and you haven't filled in a field that is absolutely necessary to fill out, you're going to get this error message. And if you click jump to next error, it will take you down to the error that, or the field that needs to be filled out. This is a field for me. You won't see this field. But if you forget to attach your documents you're supposed to attach, which we'll talk about in a little bit, or there's a field that's mandatory that you don't fill out, you will get that error message. If you cannot figure out what your error is, just reach out to me, send me an email. I will hop in there and get whatever is wrong fixed for you, and we'll get your application submitted. So once you have everything done, you have submitted your application successfully, you will be able to tell that it has been submitted because your pending request number will go down to 0 and your submitted requests number will go up to 1. So if you click on submitted requests, you could now see, oh, here's my application. It has been submitted. I know that it's under review because it says so in this little state button. This state line right here will update as your application moves through the system. It's going to say under review for a while we go through our review process. But as your application changes status within our system, that state button will update for you. Okay, you've submitted your application. You know it's submitted because it's right here. Quickly, we're going to go over what happens if your application is successful and you are a grantee. You will be able to see all of your active grants under this tab right here. Those progress reports that Gabby talked about, the progress report and the final report, they will show up under this reports due section. You will have a number 1 when your progress report is due. And then you can see their payment section down there will tell you when you have a payment scheduled to you. And you'll also be able to see when those payments have been paid. Okay, quickly, I want to talk about documents that you need to attach to your application before you submit it. So I'm here in my pending requests. I'm going to hit the edit button so I can get back into this live application. And you fill out all your information, you answer your questions. Feel free to copy and paste into this online system. That is perfectly fine. You can see all my test data that's in there. Okay, when you get down here to grantee project documents, we've got a little bubble here that tells you exactly what you do need to attach to your application. These project documents are required, so you will get an error if you do not attach them. So this first one, most recent audit or working link to audit online. If your organization is required to have an audit, and we know that not every organization is, but if you're required to have an audit, please upload that here or a link to your audit online. If you are not, if you don't have to have an audit per law for the state of Kansas, of course, we don't expect you to have one. Just let us know. When applications come in, I will take a look at your financials and I'll know if you need to have an audit or not. So if I see, nope, they're not required, I won't bug you for one. But if I see on your financials that yes, you are required by the state of Kansas to have an audit, I'll reach out to you and ask for one if you haven't uploaded it. The second thing we're asking for is your current financial statements. So current means within the last 6 months, please. And what we need is an income statement, otherwise called a statement of activities or your profit and loss. And we also need a balance sheet, which is your statement of financial position. And within the last 6 months, so if you're submitting by October 19th, we would like maybe January to June. Something current, maybe March to October would be okay for financial statements. And if you have any questions about what you need to upload, reach out to me. I'll work with you to make sure you get the correct documents on there. And the other thing we need is your most recent IRS Form 990. Please include all pages of that. Okay, that is all. Since we're not requiring a budget, that is all that you need to upload. You upload those by clicking this little green plus sign right here. So when you click this, you're going to get an upload files box. You click this add files and your task manager on your computer will open. You pick your file, you hit start upload, and it will upload that document for you. You'll get a message here that says upload complete. And then you use this little gray X to exit out, and you will be able to see your document has been uploaded right there. If you have any trouble at all uploading documents, any questions about what you need to upload, please reach out to me. If you have any questions about getting logged in, if you're having problems, please reach out to me. Something I do notice a lot is people will start an application and then they won't remember how to get into their application, so they'll start another one. That's okay. I'll delete them in the back end, but just know this pending requests is where your application lives. And if you accidentally start a second application, it's okay. Don't worry about it. You can let me know and I will delete the other one out so you don't get confused. But you only need to hit the start an application button one time. After that, you live in pending requests until you submit. So I think that's everything that I have to cover. Let me just show you how to log out of Flux real quick. Down here at the bottom, this gear, you can change your password here and you can also log out of the system. So I'm going to hit log out and it just takes you back to that login page. All right, so I'm finished. We're going to go back to the questions page. Feel free to raise your hand or put questions in the Q&A box. Yeah, and we'll chat for a moment.
Thank you so much, Kelly. If your organization is doing important work that aligns with the RFP, but you're not yet a formal 501c3. Thank you so much for asking that. You most definitely can use an established, whether you want to call it a fiscal agent, fiduciary partner, such as a community foundation or other established 501c3 that is willing to serve as your fiscal agent. If you're listening to this webinar and going, well, I don't even know what a fiscal agent is, and I don't want to ask, just reach out to the program team or Kelly, and we can walk you through what that means and maybe even point you to some ideas of how you might find a fiscal agent. So thank you very much for asking that question. A couple of other questions that have come in, and then Kelly, I think there's a few specific to you in Flux that, the most common question we all get asked is, hey, am I eligible for this? And that's a really hard question to ask us, the programming team, because we honestly don't know until we see the application. And we're not trying to be coy, but if we say no, then you might not put in an application that our review team may have scored favorably. If we say, yes, you write an application, maybe it doesn't get funded, you can be mad at us, but now you have a great application you can repurpose. But a couple of key things I'll say. If your organization is doing, you do not have to be a healthcare organization, as Gabby said, but you do need to be doing work that somehow affects and impacts the health and well-being of Kansans, and be able to demonstrate that in your narrative. That can be health, that can be social determinants of health, which are often social service needs, health-related social needs. You just have to be able to demonstrate that in your narrative. And if you, in the RFP, we have the questions you have to answer. And I would say, first section, introduction of your organization, look at question number 2. Now I'm looking like a school marm with my old lady glasses. Describe the population you serve and the critical health and or social needs for which your organization focuses its times and resources. Describe the impact on this population if your organization did not exist. I'd say, and Brandon and Gabby, you may want to chime in, that's probably one of the most important questions for your organization to look at and see, is this a good fit for us? Would we, do we make the good case for health? The last thing I'll say is I would invite you to read through all the application questions, and that will probably tell you, is this a good fit? When these are reviewed, we have an external review panel that all they'll see is your application and your narrative and your supporting documents. So Brandon, Gabby, and I want to be as absolutely as helpful as we can, but we won't be making the final decisions, and communications with you before the application is submitted are not ones that can be considered during the review process. So I would say it's an easy application. As someone who writes grants myself for my community, you always learn something. If you think you're a fit, put in the application and we'd love to read about it and learn more. I'm going to mute myself so Kelly can address her questions, and we'll see what others come in and what Brandon or Gabby might want to add.
Great. Thanks, Elizabeth. I'm just going to go through the list here and answer any questions that I think that I can answer. So if you're a returning applicant, the signatory and the financial contact names will be in the dropdown. That is correct. If those names have changed, you just need to register that person or send me an email, and I will create a login for them so that they'll be in your dropdown to pick from. Will our application be less considered if we have not been operating a full year and do not have tax or financial documentation from the previous year? Absolutely not. Startups is great. We want to be able to support as many of you as we can in this grant process. So if you are a brand new nonprofit and you feel like you're a good fit for this application, please apply. And we'll work out the financial details when you submit your application. Whatever you've got, please submit to us, and I'll let you know if I need something else. Is there a draft template application that we can download? So all the application questions are in the RFP. So you can download that from, Elizabeth's pointing to it. You can download that from our Sunflower website, and all of the application questions word for word are in there. Our organization does not have to file an IRS Form 990. We file a Medicare cost report. Would we submit this in place of a Form 990? If you don't have to file a Form 990, please submit a W-9. That's what we have our government agencies submit, because they don't file a 990. So please just upload a W-9 in that spot. And if we have any questions about your eligibility, we will talk to you one-on-one about that. That's all the questions I see so far.
Kelly, did you get the one
missed
about?
one.
Yeah.
Whose financial documents should be submitted if you use a fiscal agent? That would be your fiscal agent's financial documents. They are going to be responsible for that money. So they are the ones that we need the financials on. That question I'll give to Brandon or Elizabeth.
We also have a question in the chat asking if there are limits in the fields for answers on Flux, Kelly, for word limits.
The text field is only so big, but we're not saying, hey, you can only have 500 words or whatnot. Once you hit the limit, which I can't really remember what it is for a text field off the top of my head. It's not us limiting them. It's just the actual physical capability of Flux. So you'll get to a point when you can't type anymore. The only question that we have actually put a limit on, and it's not a physical limit on this one, it's just a request on our part, is the very last question of the application asks you, hey, is there anything that we didn't ask you that you want to tell us? I know some of you could write like 3 chapters about your organizations because of such the wonderful work that you do and how impactful you are in your community. But we're asking you to please limit that to a couple of brief paragraphs, just so that we can review these applications in a timely manner and get those decisions out to you. Are you guys seeing the question about the endowment?
No.
Can this money be
Oh.
used to create an endowment fund for sustainability?
No. So the goal with the dollars is that they would be liquidated in the grant period.
Great question. Thank you for asking that. This is an easy one I can take on about downloaded for review and discussion with the team. Since Kelly has reminded us multiple times, it's really best to do this in a Word document, the entire application. That can, of course, be easily shared with your team or Google Docs or however. And then once you've all decided on the narrative, then it can be copy pasted and uploaded into Flux.
Also a question about, can the grant funds be used to support an FTE? And they can be used to support an FTE. Again, these are core operating dollars, so you can apply them in your budget however you wish to. But also just remember that the deliverables that you're reporting on are all related to your capacity needs and how you're working as a team to address those needs. So if you do not need to use any of these grant funds to support your work that you're doing around capacity building, that's totally fine. If you need to use all of these funds to support the work that you want to do in capacity building, that is also fine, or somewhere in between. But just know what we're going to be asking you about from a reporting standpoint is all about how you are working to address your capacity needs and building your infrastructure to better meet the mission that you have as an organization.
That's said so well. Thank you, Brandon. And even backing up a little bit, yes, that's the reporting, but that's also something that in the review process, you'll want to strive to be as explicit and as possible in explaining, hey, we're going to use these funds to help pay for staff XYZ or this program, but that gives us the bandwidth to then do A, B, C, D, E, F, G in regards to our capacity building, so that a year from now, we will not have to be perhaps scrambling so much for grant money for this because we've built our capacity. I hope, well, I can't see you. I hope that makes sense. It's all about the deliverables, not only in the grant report, but really thinking about that and explicating that in your application so that it's clear to the reviewers.
Yeah, I have 2 more questions so far. One I'm going to give to Brandon, and then the next one I'll give to Elizabeth. Brandon, can you share how much total funding is available from Sunflower for this round of grants?
So we have not arrived at our total as of yet. I would say historically for capacity building grants, we have been able to fund anywhere from 35 to 50 applications. So hopefully that gives you a range of kind of where we will likely end up. The final decision on who will receive funding rests with our board of trustees. So they will make that final determination based on recommendations from that review team that Elizabeth spoke about. So I would say in the range of 35 to 50 is probably a good number to kind of shoot for.
All
And
right.
I see the next question,
Okay,
Kelly, and
go
I'm
for it.
happy to take that on. I would say if you, the question is about if it's around trail development, are they eligible to apply? If your application can make the good case that there's capacity building needs within the organization itself, and this is how you get closer to increasing the capacity, and you have a, you know, an idea of how that will happen, I would encourage any organization that can point to health and social service needs to apply. That being said, we are looking to expand the net with this funding opportunity. As you know, Sunflower has some core priority areas, and we have been just delighted beyond measure to be working for years in this area and prioritize our investments there. We would also like this funding opportunity to help those who have toiled away for years on health-related service, social needs, but just never quite fit into our core program areas. This to be a real opportunity for them to have some funding, and for us to learn about them. But the last thing I'll say is, we really do welcome all applications that feel like they fit this need. We will learn a lot by reading them. It'll help us think about funding and capacity building moving forward. And it will help us think about learning collaborative opportunities, not just for grantees, but is there a need for also those who perhaps don't get awarded a grant, but could benefit from that? So I know I didn't directly answer the question, but unfortunately it's not a black and white like a Oreo. It's gray like the ice cream that's been sitting in my freezer for 8 months. Sorry, last day of summer. I'm thinking about ice cream.
Do you see
Okay.
that question there, Elizabeth?
Which one is that from? If we ask for
The
the maximum.
amount.
So we typically, did you see that one, Brandon?
I did not have that one.
It's about if they ask for the maximum amount, I'll just read it out loud. Would you consider funding the proposal at a lesser amount if that's all in your budget? Or would asking for the maximum amount we could use make it less likely you would fund the proposal at all? Please don't worry about that. Again, I speak as someone who seeks grants as a local citizen, and I know there's always like a game to it. Ask for what you need. You know, we've told you what the maximum amount is. We're not going to come back and say, we love what you're doing, but can you do it for less? That's not fair. It really is on the quality of the application and the priorities of the review panel. Brandon, do you have anything to add to that?
I would agree. So we're not just trying to hit a certain dollar amount here. So we're looking at the quality of the applications and the needs that are outlined in those applications. So, you know, if we get to 42 applications and we only have, you know, $15,000 left in what we intended to spend, we're not just going to go through and look for a grant that's for $15,000, or we're not going to take the next grant that scored highest and cut it down to $15,000. So I agree with Elizabeth. Just put in what your needs are and what you feel like dollar amount from this RFP would help offset those needs.
Kelly, we've got quite a few questions in the chat about 990s. Do you want to tackle those?
I'm trying to find the beginning of okay, here we go.
And thank you everyone for putting your things in the chat and the Q&A, and we promise we will get to them all.
Yes, we will. So first I've got, can this be downloaded for review and discussion with my team? Yes, we will have the recording of the webinar and the slides up on the website, so you can watch that recording with your team and also look at the RFP and the slides for this webinar. What about if we became a nonprofit in December 22, don't have a 990? That's fine. Just go ahead and submit your IRS determination letter instead of your 990. Brandon answered that one. We file a 990N because our annual revenue is less than 50,000. What documentation should we provide as evidence that we have filed our 990N? You can go ahead and file your postcard that you get that says you have a 990N or you filed a 990N. That would be fine. Okay, we talked about the character limit. If returning to complete the grant after saving a portion, where is the edit button? It is up in the upper right-hand corner. So once you click that pending requests and your pending request opens and you click on that, you'll see that edit button up in the right-hand corner next to the print icon. And if you can't find it, please let me know and I can help you out with that individually. Okay, we talked about the 990N.
Another question about the audit, kind of a repeat. Maybe you want to just repeat what you said in the beginning about if you're not required by the state to have an audit.
Sure. So we do ask for an audit or a link to a working audit. But if you are not required by the state of Kansas to have an audit and you don't have one, that's fine. I will know if you're required to have an audit or not because I can see your financials. And if you are required because of the amount of your revenue to have an audit and you have not attached one, I will reach out to you and ask for it. And if you have any questions about your financials or your audit when you're uploading those documents, just reach out to me and we can have a one-on-one conversation about that. This question looks like it's an Elizabeth or Brandon. We have a program that focuses on behavioral health among youth, but are needing funding to continue this work. Would this program that would be supported, would this be eligible for this grant? I'm going to paraphrase there.
Yes, if you are augmenting or filling gaps in programming, you as a core operating grant can use these funds to do that. Just remember though, the flavor or the focus of this RFP, which is capacity building. So what we are going to ask you about is all about your capacity building needs. So the expectation is that you're reflecting on those as a team, you're working on those as a team. If you're not needing to put dollars towards those and you're shoring up programmatic needs, that's fine. But just be aware of all that you'll be asked to report on and reflect on will be about your capacity building needs as an organization, not in this case, the behavioral health program for youth.
Well said, Brandon. And again, that's, I think, what the application questions really pinpoint on those and what the reviewers will be looking for. I'll take on the question, can the grant funds be used to establish a foundation and cover the legal costs, etc.? So I'm guessing this is coming from a coalition and organization that is doing health related work impacting the population, and you can make that case in the application. If you make the case that by becoming a nonprofit, this is needed in the community to do this work, and you need that organizational infrastructure to build the capacity, then yes, that would be eligible. Again, it all comes down to being able to explain in the application why these steps are necessary to expand the capacity.
All right, I'll take the next one. Does Flux not work on certain browsers? Flux is cloud-based, so it's supposed to work on all browsers, but I will tell you that it works best on Chrome or Firefox. And I'm just going to go back up to that audit question, Elizabeth, because it has a slightly different flavor. Yes, if you've just passed that 500,000 threshold where you have to have an audit, but you haven't got one done yet because you just got there, that's okay. Just let me know. We'll be fine. You can just upload your current financials. We'll work through those one-on-one situations together. So any questions, please just reach out to me.
And on that note, really, that you see that our emails are up here. This is the absolute best way to reach us. One, we don't know how our phone system works. No, I'm kidding. We're happy to have phone calls, but it's really best if those are scheduled rather than just randomly calling the office. And the reason we really like the questions and the reach out by email first, and preferably if it's a programmatic, email it to all three of us. So that way we can track and document the responses we're giving. The last thing we want is for you to call or email just one person and get an answer that hasn't been agreed upon by the team, and maybe it's not quite the right answer. So we are definitely a team here, all four of us, but email is best. And if and if you're like, I really need 15 minutes of your time, we're very happy to schedule that.
And I will add, as you consider this opportunity, we encourage you, as you sit down with your team, to not only sit down with this recording or the slides that were provided, but sit down with the actual RFP, because the RFP itself actually provides a lot more detail into all of the components that we're talking about, especially around the who should apply. And there's a section in there about how the reviewers will prioritize applications. That's also an important section to look at as well. That doesn't mean that all applications that will be funded hit all of those bullet points under prioritization, but those are some of the kind of low-hanging fruit, if you will, that reviewers will be looking at when they start sorting through and scoring the various applications. So please spend some time with the actual RFP, because that provides a wealth of information that augments today's discussion.
That looks like all the questions in the chat, and I do not see any more new questions in the Q&A box. So I think we got them all.
Good deal.
All right. We'll have just a couple more seconds of uncomfortable silence to see if anything pops up at the last minute. It looks like you're scrolling through, Kelly, making sure we got them all. All right. Well, we know your time is really valuable, and we appreciate you joining us live, giving up an hour to learn more about this. We're excited to see the interest. We're just deeply grateful for the work of nonprofits in Kansas. Sunflower cannot do our work without you. So thank you very much for being here, for joining us. We look forward to seeing your applications. We look forward to answering follow-up questions, emailing all three of us. And if you have a question about Flux, do not ask Brandon and me. Go directly to Kelly. I'm just telling you right now. Any last words from you, Brandon?
That's it.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful last day of summer.
Thank you, everyone.